Welcome back to Navigating Neva. I'm Neva Nicole, and today we're sharing something new. I've got my co-host Wesley King
Hey everybody, thanks for being here.
and our special guest Phil. Welcome, Phil. Phil is known for his work in aquatics, but today he's going to talk about the next chapter with Splash Safe.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Really excited. Awesome to be on.
Absolutely. And Phil and I have worked together for a little over a year now on a lot of different things, really breaching across the waters, if you will, in New Zealand and doing a lot of great things together with really drowning prevention, with tools and resources, with throwing darts, with learning all kinds of time change differences. And Phil was a competitive swimmer, and so we'll leave it off to him. But a lot of great resource that Phil has and a lot of great experience Phil has. So Phil, please take it away.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome working with you for the last year. That's for sure. I think we teach each other quite a bit on the different
Indeed.
nuances. So, yeah, no, it has. It's been really, really good to work with you.
And mate, I believe we call each other now, and all kinds of good things. So tell us, Phil, how did you get started at aquatics? Tell us about your background. What got you to where you are now?
So as you mentioned, I was a competitive swimmer back in the day. So I was quite late to the party for a competitive swimmer. I don't think I started till I was about 11, 12. But because I was that little bit older, got to quite a high level over in the UK. And then rather than want to go and stack shelves in a supermarket, I thought, well, hey, I've watched the lifeguards on the side of the pool. I've seen what they're up to, and I reckon that could be a bit of me. I think Baywatch also had quite a bit of a bit to do with it as well. Good old David Hasselhoff
He
and
changed a
seeing that.
lot of our lives, buddy. He changed a lot of our
Yeah,
lives.
you never hassle the Hoff. So that's really what kind of got me into it. And then I suppose I started swim teaching when I was 14, and that came about because my PE teacher, Helen Buist, still remember her name. She said, "Oh, you know a bit about swimming. Do you reckon you could teach the kids that were, kind of in the college years?" And I was, "Oh, yeah, sweet as." Like, as you know, Wes, I very rarely say no to things. It's
Yeah.
a new challenge. Yeah, so started swim teaching at 14, and teaching kids that were 2 years older than me as well. So it was a bit of a baptism of fire. And then from there, I've just kind of worked my way through the ranks. So I've done pretty much every job you could ever imagine in aquatics, right from the very, kind of the crux of it of your lifeguarding, swim teaching, team leader, all of that sort of stuff, right the way through to facility management and multiple facility management as well. The one thing I love about it, it's always a challenge. It's always
Hmm.
interesting. There's always something new that comes along.
Right.
And then I've also been really lucky to work with the likes of Water Safety New Zealand. So obviously I'm in New Zealand, so good day. And from Australia as well. And part of one of the kind of key achievements, I suppose, was writing the National Schools Programme for New Zealand.
Yes.
So I was a big part of the advisory group that did that. And then more recently, I've been working around how do you reach the kind of 50% globally that just don't
Hmm.
get the ongoing access to the education they need to really make a difference to the drowning numbers. So I think the passion comes from saving lives. Like every family that we can reach, every child that learns is a one that's less likely to turn up in a statistic and
Sure.
turn that around. So yeah,
It's
that's
phenomenal. Real quick, I want to don't want to skip over this. I heard National Swim Program. The United States does not have one. My children are in elementary school. Nicole's children have gone through elementary school. We don't learn about swimming in the school systems. We don't have. So if you would, I know we've got a lot to discuss, and I know Nicole has some great questions for you. Could you give the audience a real quick summary of what that is and how, in fact, maybe you were able to do that? We'll dive deeper later into it. But I want everybody to understand that if you're in New Zealand and your kid is in elementary school, they have swim requirements and swim training and water safety training, and you are that training. Yes?
Yeah, so everything's run by the curriculum as it normally is in school. So in the curriculum, there is a line which we're trying to get a little bit more redefined. But there is a line in the curriculum that all children must receive an aquatic education throughout New Zealand. One of the big differences is obviously population. I mean, New Zealand is, there's only about 4.5 million, 5 million of us. So we wouldn't probably classify as a city in most American states.
A good portion of the country, though, you could fit in.
Yeah. So, but what that is pretty much every child between the ages of 5 and 13 get access to this Water Skills for Life program, which is a Water Safety New Zealand initiative. And what it does is, the whole aim is, it doesn't teach swimming strokes, it doesn't teach your freestyle butterflies, all of that. What it does is it really focuses on what are the core skills that they need. So works on their water confidence and awareness, their floating, and then some more complicated stuff, like how to critically think and make sure you can get out wherever you're going in, and all of those other things. So, and then all kids kind of go through that, and they normally get around about 2 weeks a year of funded tuition.
Has that always been a thing?
No, so we I'm just trying to think what year it was. I think it was around 2015 when we did that. So we
started
came together
when you started it.
Keep
going. Yeah.
So 2015 was where we came up with the Water Skills for Life, kind of project and program, I suppose. And then what we've been doing over the last few years, and again, I still come into Water Safety New Zealand every now and again and just kind of help quality assure the program. So making sure that things are being taught the way that they are. Definitely been a learning curve. There's a lot of definitely the implementation. If anybody's thinking about doing a statewide or countrywide thing, implementation is just as important as the program, and we kind of fell foul a little bit of that. But no, it hasn't been a forever thing. It used to depend on where you were in the country, but trying to get a full alignment to a national program was a very big step forward for New Zealand.
So again, tell me the ages that they are. Did you say third grade through 15-year-olds?
Yeah, 5 to 13 is where they get the
okay. So our first grade, kindergarten or first grade for us, through eighth grade for American. So
the question though is, if I take it in my first grade, and when I come back the next year, is your curriculum that you guys are providing a stepping stone where, if I didn't learn level 1, I just keep repeating level 1 again, even though I'm now,
there are test outs, correct, Phil? There are test out phases.
Yes, so it works off 27 baseline competencies. So they're split across kind of 6 different sections. So whether that's orientation or submersion or kind of propulsion, whatever those things are. So what we do is most of the providers, the way that it works is they'll probably split the groups a little bit. So it works similar to a swimming lesson where you've kind of got your beginning, your kind of early learners, you've got the kids that can kind of do it, and then you've got the kids that are probably ready to be challenged and moved up. So it works similar to that, where there's an advanced group, an intermediate, and then a kind of more remedial group for those that haven't learned the skills the year before. And that's one of the other things that we find with that program, is because there is a year between drinks, so to speak, and there is a lot of skill regression from one year to the other. But that's why the program's spread over 5 years, and it doesn't go into the complicated side of swimming, because one of the big problems and the big shifts was we're trying to teach a really complicated skill in 4 or 5 hours a year, and if you try and learn anything in 4 hours a year, if you try to learn the piano in 4 hours a year, you will not be playing Mozart.
You won't know how to spell piano.
It's not how it works. So the more that they can, kind of get that exposure to the water in the in between times, that's probably one of the key challenges that we need to try and overcome. But again, that was where Splash Save was kind of created for, was to provide that more community safety net. So it's not an expensive thing every time, because we do spend a phenomenal amount of money paying for swim teachers to deliver that program, because learn to swim isn't cheap, from like I said, working in every aspect of it, it's not cheap.
Well, I'm gonna turn our course right now, because I think we could do an entire episode on this, but I'm gonna bring us to the next. So I have Navigating Neva, and then I was just minding my own business one day, and Wes sends me this thing that says Navigating Aquatics. So I thought you could tell us what led to Navigating Aquatics and what your vision was for that, and what you liked, highs and lows, what you liked about it?
Yeah, well, so again, one of the main problems that we're trying to solve is the 50% problem. So in the developed nations, approximately there or thereabouts, it's in the high 40s to low 50s that are not able to participate in regular education. Because I've managed to get some, really good experience, worked with quite a few different countries around the world. What I was noticing was a lot of the problems are still the same. There's a reason why we're not able to reach that 50%, and that is because we're so tunnel visioned trying to keep the 50% we've got happy and participating. It's actually really difficult. Again, sitting in that seat, it's really difficult to get to the other 50%. So the whole purpose of Navigating Aquatics was to help provide some easy development for those in aquatics. There's a whole bunch of training and knowledge that's available for your lifeguards and for your swim teachers, and there's so many different courses you can do. There's so many extension courses. But then when I was moving through the ranks, you don't get taught any of that stuff. I mean, all of a sudden you're responsible for a team. At one point, I was responsible for a team of 86 people, and I never received any managerial training. I had no idea what a performance review was. And obviously over the years,
You just move through the ranks, right? You just move through the ranks.
He can swim, so he's got it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You heard his background.
Yeah, there was so many. If I look back, I mean, I've been involved in this industry now coming up. It's nearly 30 years. It's longer than anybody would care to admit, considering I wasn't planning to come in as a lifer. But it's one of those things that there's so many times that I've scratched my head. I've got no idea what to do. The information isn't available. There's no easy way to do it. And the only courses that were really available, and I suppose you'll have them in America as well, is Dale Carnegie courses and things like that really have no relevance to aquatics.
Great
whatsoever.
Name drop, by the way. Great name drop.
I've done a lot of those Dale Carnegie courses, and while they're really good and really powerful, the relationship between what we have to deal with in aquatics and what most other industries have to deal with, it's chalk and cheese. They're two totally separate things. So I suppose the purpose initially with that Navigating Aquatics podcast was to try and provide a platform where people could ask questions, we could provide advice, and really help facilities and those that work in them get ahead, understand there is more than the people that they deal with. Yes, they're hard to reach. However, if you do some simple things, there's some really easy things that you can do that actually bring them into your facility, which means they start winning because there's more utilization and there's more revenue coming in through the front door. But what it also does is it links them with the services that they offer. So by increasing that 50%, you increase your revenue, you increase your utilization, and your operation becomes a bit smoother. And then we actually hit more of the population to teach them the basic water skills that stop the amount of deaths that happen every year.
Well, thank you. Yes, Wes?
Oh, no, go ahead, please.
So I was going to say that sounds wonderful. And to all of our viewers that are listening, if you thought that sounded wonderful, we're going to announce that Phil is not just a guest tonight. He's going to collaborate with us. So if you have questions, he's going to come and join us monthly. So all of our listeners can expect to hear from him. And I know Wes and I talk about it all the time. We don't find a lot of help in aquatics, or it's just a 3-month job and nobody gives you help because it's just 3 months, it'll come, it'll go. Right. But we're here to help facilitate that, and we'll have him on monthly, and you can always reach out to us on the Facebook page or the website and send questions.
And I think that's a great point. And one of the things I love about our working together, Phil and Nicole too, is the way you have perspective on things. And yes, the global perspective because you're across the country and across the world, but also the understanding of what business can do. You talked about the other 50%. When you hear Bill Gates he talks about death rates. When you hear fitness centers talk about 80% of the population, right? Every fitness center in the country is fighting for the same 17% of the humans that will join a fitness center. We are trying to resolve a 50% margin. I think when aquatics people start to hear the impact they can have, such as fitness center growth, such as drowning global rate, those are big concepts to grasp. And what I love about this specific podcast and having you on is the ability to pull some of that information in and say, these are tangible subjects. These are real impacts that aquatics can have if you can be efficient at your job, if you know how to hire right, if you can keep your pool balanced, if you can market your pool, all the fun things. And I think that's another takeaway that the audience should have is if you don't know the impact your pool is having, or you don't understand what your boss wants from you, or you keep stepping in the you know what every day, put a question in. Ping Nicole or I or Phil and say, hey, anonymously or not, how do I figure out how to take that large 30,000 view and the dog's eye view and put them together? So I say all that to ask this, Phil, what's different from the last time you took a crack at this? What have you learned? What would you like to make more impactful or more useful moving forward with this specific podcast from maybe what you've done in the past?
Yeah, I think the way that I liken it, and I think I've said this throughout my entire career since I started moving up the ladder, like I'm a lifeguard that's done good,
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of
put that on a t-shirt every week. We get a t-shirt tagline. That's it. Yeah.
So a lot of the new challenges, everything that I was explaining before about that whole ACE system, like I still face those challenges because a big part of what I'm trying to do is to do things that haven't really been done before, So I suppose one of the main lessons that I learned out of it was I never dreamed of doing a podcast. I'd never thought about doing anything like that before. Somebody said you should do. In fact, I think it might have been you, Wes, said you should do this and let's work it out. And I think what's different this time is, again, having the support of Nicole and yourself to really work together. I think one of the things that we don't do overly well in this industry is work together.
Every time you talk, you say it, brother. Keep going.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of cutthroatness that goes on in the industry. And to me, I've always tried to look past that because it's about people not dying. It's not about my bottom line. Not about any of that. It's actually about saving lives is what we do at the end of the day. So I think the first attempt at, kind of that Navigating Aquatics was in an effort to provide that little bit of, kind of training and all of that sort of stuff. But I think the big difference here is having a little bit of quality behind what we're doing rather than me just trying to make it up and figure it out. I mean, and massive props to you, Nicole, for the work that you do in this space, because it's really cool from my point of view to be able to come and sit and be part of this because you've got a really good idea of what you're doing and what you put out is really high quality. So that is the big difference is using collaboration, support, working together. And 9 times out of 10, you come out with a better result, in my experience. It's when you butt heads with people and then you're arguing about, whatever the things that we argue about in this industry is when you get to the point where actually nothing really moves forward. But as soon as you can collaborate, I think everything works. So again, a massive thank you from me to you guys for, kind of bringing me on, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I am very happy to have you, but thank you so much for all your kind words. Mine feels like my life every day in aquatics. I mean, I don't have time to hate on you because I'm trying to patch the hole over here and fix this and fix this. And I really just need, like on a swim team or even, when we train our lifeguards, they're trained to be a team. Aquatics for me has always worked when we're a team. And now that we're a global team, that gives us even more insight, and the things to come I think are pretty amazing, but we're very happy to have you on.
Absolutely. Cool. And just to kind of triple down on that, and I know we'll wrap up here in a minute, I think you bring up a great reminder, Phil, and Nicole and I've been talking about this, and Phil, you and I talk about it. There is a lot of room to collaborate in this industry, and whether you don't have a question or you have a thought or say, hey, here's how I collaborate, send us that note too, so we can share those stories, because we want to celebrate that, but we've also kind of had our edges worn down a little bit to say, you got to push hard to connect rather than be disconnected. So again, just love that that's your approach, Phil. Yeah.
So let's get to practicality. What are some of the bigger topics that you want us to cover together on the podcast? What can our listeners look forward to hearing when they come back month after month?
So again, there's so much to talk about. There are so many things that happen both within the industry and out, and for me, definitely the thing that you'll hear a lot about is that reaching the 50%, because there is so many things we can do. And, Wes, you touched on it before. the gym, you know, the fitness centers,
Yeah.
they're battling for, you know, kind of the same 20%, you know, which is kind of what happens in our industry as well. But as soon as the facilities start realizing, hey, actually, there's a whole nother piece of the pie that's over this side that is really untouched, they, you know, kind of get left because they're too difficult to deal with. But they're really not, you know, from like the work that I've done, it's that by just tweaking the way that you do your swimming lessons, you can actually attract an entirely different community that you never thought you'd be able to do simply by smart recruitment and working through that and with the community, rather than throwing a poster at them and going, hey, we run lessons in Spanish or Maori or whatever. It's actually going to the community and working with them and going, hey, how does this work for you? Because the way we deliver is very Western, and the world is not Western. You know, there is a large chunk of the world, but the entire world does not operate in a Western way, and I think that's something that we miss a lot, and I'm guilty of that. I think every Westerner is guilty of it, of going, this is how it's done. You do a half an hour lesson, you do this, and then at the end of it, this is the result. Whereas a lot of the communities that I've dealt with look at things in an entirely different way to the way that we do things. And it just doesn't connect. So I think there's some really common things that happen in the industry, like recruitment. You know, there's a whole bunch of recruitment strategies that we can talk about in this, and retention of staff as well. Like, I think the thing that kills our industry is turnover, because, as you say, most people see it as a summer job or you know, and I alluded to it earlier. I think when I started my first lifeguarding job at 16, when I could legally work, not just get paid out of a vending machine, you know, I came into it thinking there's no way I'm going to be in this when I'm 40. You know, like there's you know, I'm going to do it while I'm at uni, and then I'll go and get a proper job. And what I found is an entire lifetime of fulfillment and an entire career that's led from that. So having retention strategies in place, having community outreach stuff, and then also keen to talk about the differences between the States and the rest of the world. You know, it's quite interesting when you step outside of your own door. I thought the problems that we had in New Zealand were very New Zealand problems, and you know, Australia was similar, but of course they're similar, we're next to each other. So whereas what I found was, when I started working in America and when I started working in the UK, and you know, kind of all of these different places, it's quite weird how we all face the same problems. So yeah, and kind of talking about what those problems are and being led by you guys on kind of core questions as well, because if one person's got it, normally there's quite a few others that have got the same question, you know.
For sure.
We did have a good kickoff, Phil, when we first started working together, of my astonishment that actually happened over there, and your astonishment there's no way this happened. And line by line, from drowning to training to challenge, you're very spot on. And I think for the audience, a great point, Nicole, of putting out there what we're going to be doing next, and also Phil describing it. I think that's a great reminder for the audience, is there's a lot of pieces to this, and whether it's recruitment or community engagement. If you heard Phil's message, he said that he asked a question: how can this work for you? How can my facility operate in your community better? And I know this, I've felt guilty of not asking that question to my local community members and to my part district, where I just said, well, it's got to work because I got to have it. And I think that's an immediate perspective that Phil can provide, is just the approach. When maybe in New Zealand, maybe you go over and ask, how can it work? Whereas in America, we say, this is what's going to work. And again, that's a great reminder of, you've got to be a partner with your community and not a pusher with your community at times.
And a lot of facilities that we've worked with before we started working with them, because through the Splash Save initiatives and those kind of parent community activations, we got to work with a lot of different community groups over a very short space of time. So we were working with pretty much most refugee and migrants that were coming to New Zealand, as well as the indigenous populations and all of that sort of stuff. And what it gave us was actually a really well-rounded view of the differences in how people see water safety, how they treat it. I mean, like, we've dealt with groups that have never even seen water before. You know, like their relationship with water was a tiny stream that ran through the middle of the village, and a big body of water that they'd never even seen before. So the way they connect with it is all really different. And
so like the Midwest, you mean? You're so like the Midwest of the, no, I'm just kidding. But not to, but there are very, and Nicole, I see your eyes popping. There's a lot of parts of this country that have very parallel challenges physically, socioeconomically, racially, etc., financially, and we have those same problems. How do anyway, Nicole? I see your eyes glowing, but I mean, did that hit home for you too when you heard some of those buzzwords and buzz locations?
Well, what I thought when I heard him talk is it earlier he mentioned, and I don't know if we were live or not, but he said, he keeps talking about the 50 that we're not touching. And if you go into different sectors, it's not 50, it's 20%, or, or they flip and it's 80. But we in aquatics, at least in America, I feel we only look at the ones we're already touching and how to make it better and how to sell it. And I think everybody sitting here tonight isn't trying to make money off a swim school. We're trying to end a pandemic. We're trying to end drowning. We're trying to bring water safety to a front. And a lot of people in America can pick up on this because they're probably in a place like I am where you're working for a city and you're getting kids that have zero water exposure, who don't have a pool, who will only come to a pool if you're here. And when you're teaching those children or even those adults or those grandparents, that's a different approach than you can do to the ones than to the other, to the 20% or the 50%. But gleaning from what Phil has, and just the three of us together, I'm more tickled to death that we've united, because a lot of people in aquatics step up for whatever drives them here. I mean, I had people this week. I'm sorry, those are my dogs.
Your dog is excited for the All Things Aquatics conference.
They're
your
together
dog
enjoying.
Yeah. Your dog's in line to register for the conference. It's okay.
Okay. So what I was saying though is the population that's listening, whether they want to ask a question that's anonymous, where they don't tell us the situation, and the three of us cannot reinvent the wheel but share what we've learned from our life, or if it's the people like me where we're trying to reach, the other 50% who haven't had that exposure. Either way, I feel it's a win-win for everybody, and they can bring those questions to us.
Absolutely.
Well, and if you want, I can share a quick example with you, where we started working with a facility. They had tried to do a Terreo Moldy program quite a few times, and it had just fallen flat every single time. And the first couple of meetings we had with them, it won't work. There's no way. We've tried so many times. And I said, well, have you tried? Like, what have you done so far?
There's that how again. Sorry, by the way. There's that how again. So there's that question, by the way. There's that how. Keep going. Sorry.
How have you done that so far? And what results have you got for it to be like that? And what they'd done is they had said, oh, we're going to offer the program in Terreo. So they'd hired somebody who was a fluent Terreo speaker, which are quite few and far between in New Zealand as well. And there's probably a lot more now than what there used to be. But so they hired a fluent Terreo speaker, which is the Maori language. And then they put a Facebook post out and then sent a poster to the iwi to go, hey, we're offering Te Ao Maori lessons. Nobody turned up. And then they tried it again. And then they sent another poster. And this time they sent an email along with it. Nobody turned up. So we said, well, let's try this a little bit differently. So instead of you saying, right, we're running this and this is how it's going to be, and it's going to be on this time and this day, why don't we go down and sit with the iwi? Why don't we go and just have a talk with them and find out how this works for them? So we did that, and we went down, we sat down, and we asked a lot of questions. And how do you guys connect? How do you see this working? What would make it so that the iwi would want to turn up, and you guys would have your backing behind it? And they gave us some things that weren't very difficult to achieve whatsoever. They just wanted a little bit of input in the program. They wanted a little bit more of a holistic viewpoint, so they see pool water as contaminated because it's got chlorine in it and it's not natural and all of those sorts of things. So it wasn't about, oh, you need to have no chlorine in your pool, but it was about, we want the holistic side of what's being taught as well. So what is the water? Where does it come from? And we want to include, they call it tikanga over here, which is your kind of respect to the land and to the oceans and all of that sort of stuff. So they wanted that incorporated in the lessons. Sweet as, no worries. So then what we did was they hired a couple of people from that iwi who would then deliver the lessons in the right way, and they get heaps turning up every week.
Cultural relevance, cultural
relevance.
Got it.
It's not you need to be here at 10:30 on Saturday morning. It is hey, at any point between this time and this time on a Saturday, you guys can come in and you can have your lessons. And then what they also do is really decouple the enrollment process. So a lot of the kind of way things are done in the Maori, kind of culture is it's through word of mouth. So one of the teachers every week just calls everybody and goes, hey, what time do you want to come in this week? And then they'll run their lessons based on what time the whānau is available, because that's one of the other challenges. They're not available at the same time every week. Their life does not work like our lives work. What our shift patterns are, we know what we do. On a true iwi, that's not how life works. They're busy doing different things, and it depends on what time of year it is or what week it is to whether or not they're available, which is why we don't see those guys book into our lessons, because it's just a waste of money for them. They're going to pay $150 for 10 weeks and not make 8 weeks of it. So we'll just leave that, It's
like being in Colorado in the snow in the middle of winter. You're not going to, or wherever, where my point is whether it's the weather, the location, the driving, the parking, finding ways to remove as many of those roadblocks based on the environment, the culture, the geographics, all of those things to systematically say what's going to work for this property, this location, this radius, as opposed to here's our franchise or here's our brick and mortar, here's our doors, come open, close door. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, very good.
It's good things for the facility. It's good things for the ownership. It's good things for the community. And again, there is no negatives from reaching more of your community.
Right.
So other than it needs to be done slightly differently to the way that you would normally do it.
Yeah, I think that was fantastic, and I look forward to hearing more about it. And
So before we let you go, before we got on, you were showing me some stuff that we're gonna show next week to the audience. Can you just say a little bit about that so they come back?
Yeah, definitely. So again, in the effort to reach the 50%, what we're, as Wes just said, trying to remove as many barriers as possible. One of the biggest ones is cost. So we've actually just finished our parent e-learning as well, which I'm really keen to kind of show you guys through. So it's Splash Save Digital, and it gives you full videos. It's translated already into Spanish, so it's available in Spanish. And we can translate it into any language as well. And what it does is it talks to parents step by step. How do they be their child's first teacher? Again, trying to make it so that this knowledge is in every parent, because every parent knows it's a risk that their child will drown. But they don't feel that they've got any options or how to resolve it other than a swim school. So
you're a new mom. You're a new. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No, perfect. Yeah. New mum, new dad. Here's the first bath. Here's how you keep them safe at home. Here's how you teach them some fun skills, and then here's the fun skills that you teach them. And then one of the other things that we'll share in a different episode is our aquatic Centre of Excellence program, which has been designed as a development tool for team leaders, managers of facilities, anybody that is kind of it works with lifeguards as well and swim teachers, but it's really been designed for that kind of team leader up level, to show you all of the different ways and things that you can do and how you can do it, and just help streamline those processes, make your daily operations easier, so then you can get out and get into your community and get more people accessing your facility.
I've recently described that ACE system as a university or college or associate's and bachelor's degree for a manager. So you go to high school, you go to college, this ACE system really can help you earn a degree, if you will, or an education structure for an aquatic manager. It takes you in the beginning, the end, it's got syllabuses. So I tease the fact that if you've never went to aquatic management school and you didn't graduate, take this program, take ACE, go through it, and you will get a degree in aquatic management as a way to help people understand the progression, the knowledge that it helps them. So anyway, looking forward to all that, Phil, and very excited to And if you are interested in the parent program, we did post it on the All Things Aquatic page. It is, you can get more information about it now currently, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah. Very good.
All right, guys, that's
Awesome.
a wrap for today's episode. Phil, again, thanks for joining us. And we can't wait
Thank
to
you
have
for
you
having me.
back monthly. Yes.
Absolutely.
Wes, any announcements?
If you haven't heard, All Things Aquatics will be live and in person September 20th, St. Simons, Georgia, Epworth by the Sea. Splash Save is a sponsor, and we'll have some information there as well. Registration's available now. Get your seat taken, get your seat booked while the price point is where you want it to be. And you'll be hearing a lot more about all the exciting vendors, guests, educators that will be coming soon. So if you stuck around for the end of this, you got even more information. So well played, Nicole.
All right, well, everybody, thank you for joining in. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and follow. And it helps us a ton if you share this with anyone. You can just take the link and share it with your friends. Come back for more each week, of course. We release these on a weekly basis. Currently, it's Wednesday. I assume it's going to stay that way. And in the meantime, stay safe. We want 0 drownings. Thanks for joining. Until next time, take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.